Get in the light as soon as possible when you're starting to freak out or be overwhelmed or you're just done. When you're in that storm, listen in the dark. He has things to say. Number 3, God will use us to be light in the darkness. And the best time to hear God's voice is when we can learn to listen in the light. We can learn what his voice sounds like without all the pressure and anxiety. Isn't it fun to have walkout music? One day you could be so lucky. So fun. I am Geri Chester, if we have not met yet. Hello. Second service has always got more spark than first, I will say that. I may mix up the slides a little bit, but Pastor Mark, or Mark to me, is currently boarding a plane to go to Kazakhstan because he's been in Istanbul for a couple days and he's over there. So he sent me pictures this morning because he got to preach this morning, which was 8 hours before our morning, at a Foursquare church in Istanbul that his friend used to pastor before they got kicked out. And just so you know, those chairs there, y'all paid for them. It's kind of a cool thing. So the money that we gave got to buy their chairs and a lot of their equipment over there. But that is Istanbul, a Foursquare church in Istanbul. So he says hello, and yeah, he's getting ready to board a plane and keep going. I will say this. I was up late last night. He called me early their time, and he's just, I'm so tired. We took a cruise thing, and then they were briefing us on all this and doing this. And then we had a dinner, and I'm like, listen, you're not parenting, you're not taking care of dogs, you're not preparing a sermon, you're not washing dishes, you're not doing laundry. So you just enjoy your time in Istanbul. That's what I said. So he will have lots of cool stuff to share with us. I'm so sure when he gets back this week, whatever you call it. He's coming back right before the men's retreat. So, all right, everybody, just up for a second. We're going to read a little scripture this morning, get y'all moving again as we prepare to talk today. Y'all can read it with me. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of this world. Sanctify them in your truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. Well, God, you know what's represented in this room and online right now. Every detail of our lives. May you already do meet us where we are, so may we experience you. May we welcome your presence. You say what you want to say. You do what you want to do to get us closer to you in the midst of all our circumstances. I just give you this next little bit of time. That you would take my mouth, that you would take all of our ears, that we would just experience what you have to teach us this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, y'all can sit now. If you were here last Sunday, Pastor Mark was chucking things with pumpkin spice. I was impressed with his arm, and he connected with everyone. I am not that girl. I don't throw well. When I do skip a water it sometimes goes over here. So he would testify to that. But if you got a bulletin/handout, you got a scratch and sniff sticker that's pumpkin spice. So that's not just a picture. It's actually scratch and sniff. So if you did not get one, you just pass it down the row so everyone gets to smell the sticker. I only did that because Marcus had too much fun just hating on pumpkin spice. So I thought, well, I'll give you a little something to smell while you're in service. See? It smells, right? They're like 80 stickers. They're awesome. All right. Well, Mark stole part of my sermon last week, which he found out afterwards. I'm like, I was preparing and you took part of it. So Pastor Mark last week talked about how to navigate through suffering. He talked about suffering, how God's presence is with us. What his promise is amidst it, and then his plan through suffering. So we're going to go a little bit further, and we're going to talk about how to navigate suffering and darkness and things that are heavy. I just wanted to take a little poll, just so we know our audience. How many of you right now in your life are going through something that's pushing on you, that is overwhelming, or that is just stressful or causes you anxiety? That's excellent. You're in a great place today. Because we're going to figure out how to navigate that. Because it's very, very real. And at some season of your life or a lot of your life, we all go through stuff that rips us up on the inside and just makes us go a little scattywampus. So we're going to talk about the day. All right. Here's the 4 points for today. And if that's all you need, you're more than welcome to exit after I'm done with the 4 points. Ready? All right. Get into the light. Listen in the dark. Be the light. And listen in the light. That's our roadmap for today, and that's kind of where we're going as we talk about how do we navigate the hard stuff in our lives. And I just want to preface this by saying, God never says it has to be like this hard for him to care and help us. But if I had a silly example last service. Like, I had Elaine Bennis hair from Seinfeld for all of my college years, if you know who that is. I have big curly hair when it's not straight. And I knew I wanted to get it cut in Texas when I was in grad school. That was a little stressful for me. And so I went, and I'm like, Jesus, you're going to have to cut my hair. I actually told the guy who cut it, face me away from the mirror because I do not want to see what he's doing. And it got chopped short. Now, that seems like a silly example. But I am telling you, the things that put pressure, gave us anxiety, that make us get worried, that little, all the way to the enormity of things, I'm talking about that today. This is not just for the totally dramatic, but it's also, this stuff applies for any moment in your life when you're triggered. Any moment in your life where you're just thrown off and everything starts to swirl around you, okay? Just so we're all on the same page. All right, we're going to dive into it. Number one, in the midst of darkness or stress or turmoil or storm, get to the light. God's kingdom does not follow the same rules as the kingdom that we live in of the world. Our flesh does not react the same as God reacts to things. So when I'm under pressure, when I'm stressed, when I've overwhelmed, or when you guys are, I don't know about you, somehow it's helpful if I hear something and it hurts me, the first thing that I'm naturally inclined to do is go find someone to tell that to. Like, oh my gosh, can you believe this is wrong? And then, or someone else, or do something. So there's an inclination in our flesh to talk. There could also be the inclination in your flesh to complain. Like, I just saw this, and that's just wrong, and it's throwing me off, and I don't like it, and da-da-da. Like, we complain. That's a natural thing in our flesh. Some of us eat excessively when we're just stressed out. I'm going to say this out loud. For those of you, and there's some of you in this room, that you relieve your stress and anxiety by running, I'm so jealous. Because I don't have that thing where my good friend in Washington State, when she gets all overwhelmed, she just takes a run. She's so tiny. She's a tiny little stressed out person. But some of us will eat excessively to deal with the stress and the overwhelmness, right? We also can hide in our habits. Some of those habits are good, like exercising, but other habits are very bad. You know the gamut. Regardless of good or bad, we can hide in those habits to not deal with, or because we don't know what to do. We can worry, we can fret, we just get overwhelmed. That's our natural flesh. And God says this in Isaiah 46, his plan: be still and know that I'm God. That is so counterintuitive to everything in our bodies to just be like, okay. It doesn't just say be still and do yoga. It says you be still and you know that I am the creator of the universe. I'm in control and I've got you. That's what that means. That's God's kingdom's way of doing things. We need to get to the light. He is the light. We need to get to him as soon as we start to feel that pressure, as soon as we start to feel overwhelmed, or as soon as we feel like we're getting sucked down a black hole. We need to get with him as soon as possible. When we press into God, he changes us. When we follow what he says, even though it feels very counterintuitive, it always gives us a perspective that leads to life and hope. He can calm us down. It's crazy how he does it when we get in his presence. It's already up here, but Isaiah 61. I want you to listen to this because this is about Jesus. This is Old Testament. Jesus quotes this in the New Testament. It is about him. So when we run to the light, when we go to him, this is what he is capable of in the midst of our overwhelmness, okay? He has sent me, Jesus, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of that nasty, nasty spirit of despair. Like, it is this sweet thing that God does. He's like, if you do it my way, if you press into me, I can do this. It's literally supernatural. And I don't know if you've been around people or you've experienced this yourself where you're like, how am I doing this? How are they doing that? That they are like, they're handling the situation. Kingdom principle is that Jesus is light and he shines a truth on everything. Listen to what it says in John chapter 1. This is about Jesus. Life itself was in him, and this life gives light to everyone. The light shines through the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. The darkness cannot. Jesus is not like a coach, and he's not like this cheerleader, like, I got a plan too, follow me. He's literally like, oh, you don't get it. You press into me, and nothing. Darkness cannot overtake me, you or I. And what's cool is God is not afraid of the dark. I will turn the lights on all over my house because I don't care for the dark. Or I will run, you run. Do you ever run from your lower level to your upper level when you turn the light off and you're like, something's behind me? So silly. But lights help, right? Well, Jesus says, listen, I'm the light. That's why I'm not afraid of the dark. And to experience this is a choice of surrender and dependency on Jesus and his kingdom and the way of doing things. It is get to the light ASAP whenever you start, or if you're there in the midst of any turmoil, any suffering, frustration. I know a lot of it's in the room right now. And so for us to learn to just press into him. All right, number 2. So the first one is, say it for me. So much better than first service. Okay, and the second one is, okay, so Paul is what we're reading about today, but the book of Acts was written by a man named Luke, okay? Well, Paul is who we've been talking about the last couple weeks. When I say get into the light, Paul was so anti-Jesus that it's like Jesus grabbed him and threw him in the light, so much so that he was blinded by the light, if you know that story. So Paul's transformation in that first step of how to deal with stuff, God literally was like, oh, I'm going to light on you. And so he was brought into the light. So Mark said I could talk about anything in Acts. So I went all the way to the end. So Mark's going to have to do some backward work. But we're going to talk at the end of Acts in chapter 23. You ready? I don't have all the scriptures that I'm reading for the story because it's a story and I want you to activate your mind to visualize what we're reading. But here we are, Acts chapter 23. Paul is arrested again, and while he's in prison, he appeals to Caesar and says, listen, I'm Jewish and I'm a Roman citizen and I'm appealing to Caesar. But in the midst of that, there were about 40 plus Jews that are like, we're going to kill him. And so they're trying to plot a way to do that with Paul. So he's in the midst of this, and they help Paul get out. So he goes to Rome without getting killed. I said that so bad, but if you can track with me, more power to you. Okay, but the night before, when this plot is being thought over, this is what happens. The Lord appeared to Paul and said, be encouraged, Paul. I just need to remind you, he's under arrest. He's in a prison. He knows he's going to Rome, and he will probably die there, right? So here's our God. Paul, be encouraged. Just as you have told the people about me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome. So in the midst of all his real circumstances, the creator of the universe is like, no, you've been doing it here. Mark talked about this last week in the midst of our suffering, and now you are also going to do that in Rome. So, Paul keeps on talking to Jesus, or talking to the people about Jesus. He's talking to kings, like real kings. He's talking to governors. He's talking to the spiritual leaders. He then gets put on a boat, set sail to Rome, and he's going from wherever I've got that later, I'll tell you where he's going. But he's going from where he is to Rome as a prisoner. He's placed in the custody of an army officer named Julius, who's very kind to Paul, okay? So when we're in hard circumstances, we have to learn to listen to the Lord and have the courage to be obedient and trust what he says, even when it's not logical and it doesn't make any sense. Do you hear me? He's in prison. That is not what I'd want God to tell me. I'd want him to say, I'm sending another angel, the door's going to fall off, you can walk out and go be with your friends again or something. But it's counterintuitive, but because he trusted that, he just kept doing what he was told. Sometimes God will say, get out of the boat. And we're like, whoa. Sometimes God says, get in the boat. Sometimes God says, rest. Sometimes he says, be active. Sometimes he says, enough, be silent. And then other times God's like, talk. So there's all these directives that God gives us, but we have to be listening when we're in the midst of our experience in that darkness, because he is saying things to us. Paul had to be listening in order to hear what God said. That's a posture that we have to have, a posture of listening in the hardest times in our life so we can actually hear what God said. And God said, you now have to go to Rome and pastor the people in Rome. And so even though he was still in custody, I think he took confidence that in the dark, we must listen to God's voice, stay focused on what's true more than what's real. And I will say this, the more you know him, the more you can trust that he actually knows what he's doing. Because our circumstances, he doesn't mess around with those. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Acts 27 as we continue the story. He's on the boat. He's going to Rome on a boat. And it says in Acts 27, we struggled along the coast with great difficulty and finally arrived at Fair Havens, near the city of Lasea. We had lost a lot of time. The weather had become dangerous for long voyages by then because it was so late in the fall. And Paul spoke to the ship's officers about it. Sirs, he said, I believe there's trouble ahead if we go on. Shipwreck, loss of cargo, injuries, and danger to our lives. But the officer in charge of the prisoners listened more to the ship's captain and the owner than to Paul. Okay, I would have listened to the ship's captain too. Oh, this prisoner has something to say. But he tells them these things, right? A storm does come up, and it's really, really strong. It does blow them out to sea, and then this happens a little later in Acts 27. But the weather changed abruptly, and the wind of typhoon strength, a northeaster they called it, caught the ship and blew it out to sea. They couldn't turn the ship into the wind, so they gave up and let it run before the gale. Then we banded the ship with ropes to strengthen the hull. The sailors were afraid of being driven across to the sandbars of Syrtis off the African coast, so they lowered the sea anchor, which is not the one that digs into the dirt, but you drag it. I didn't know that before yesterday, but it's a freebie for you. They lowered the sea anchor and were thus driven before the wind. The next day, a gale-force wind continued to batter the ship. The crew began throwing the cargo overboard. The following day, they even threw over the ship's equipment and anything else they could lay their hands on. The terrible storm raged unabated for many days, blotting out the sun and the stars until at last, all hope was gone. Think about times in your life where you're like, I'm done. I'm at the end of my rope. I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried that. I'm like done, right? That's where they are. And so this is what Paul says. No one has eaten for a long time. Finally, Paul called the crew together and said, men, you should have listened to me in the first place and not left Fair Havens. You would have avoided all this injury and loss, but take courage. None of you will lose your lives, even though the ship will go down. For last night, an angel of the Lord to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me. And he said, don't be afraid, Paul, for you will surely stand trial before Caesar. What's more, God in his goodness has granted safety to everyone sailing with you. So take courage, for I believe God, and it will be just as he said. But we will be shipwrecked on an island. I love how Paul, in the midst of that, I'd like to meet him. I don't know if I like the fact that he's like, if you would have listened to me, this wouldn't have happened. I'm like, sure, I need to see how he would say that, because that sounds kind of rude. But he's very much like, this is what my God told me, I'm telling you. He was still hearing God in the midst of absolute chaos. And let me just tell you a few things if you did not know this. I'll just say this. The third point. So the first point is, you can't do it without cheating, can you? Get in the light, then listen in the darkness. And then the last one of this is so far is be the light. Here's the deal. We live in a very dark world. And when we're overwhelmed with circumstances, whether it's with our family or a job, health, relationships, injustice, just situations that are happening, we react, like I said, we can react in all different ways. But to choose to navigate it with God is to submit to the way that he does it. And here's what happens, and I've seen it a lot. He literally takes over when we surrender to him, like when we get in his presence, and then when we're listening, and then when we're obedient, like Paul. He gets in, and he makes us light in that dark, overwhelming situation. Like number 3 is allow God to let you be the light in the midst of the darkness. Nobody else on that boat, nobody is recorded as being like, God's got it. They literally had no idea, pitch black. And then Paul is the one, because he's listening to the Lord, can be light in that situation. Paul got to be the light, and it flipped everything. He had his wits about him, and he confidently declared, amidst the hopelessness, that God's got it. Like he was so present because he trusted in God's presence and he believed in him. Okay, I'm going to take an exit ramp for just a second. Did you hear when I said they banded the ship with ropes to strengthen the hull? I have to find out what that is because I'm not a nautical person. So, banded the ship, sailors do that at the most critical situation. They only do it in crisis. It is called frapping. And when you frap a ship, you're taking those ropes or chains and you're wrapping it around the hull of the ship to keep that thing together in the midst of a storm. Involves passing large ropes, cables, or chains around the circumference of a ship's hull to hold it together during a severe storm. It's an action, and it is a last resort emergency. Now listen, I have to think to myself, and I looked it up. Who's going under? Because I don't know how that works. Now, the only person, because I'm waiting for someone to tell me how it works. Maybe some of y'all can tell me in the middle of a storm what that looks like. But that means someone said some people had to jump in and they have to swim underneath the boat, pop up so they can pull those ropes. And what, do they do that all night? No, not happening here, right? Someone did tell me after a first service that, well, maybe they dropped it off the bow, because you bow in the front, and it would go to the back. But I'm sorry, if the waves are like this, it's not guaranteed. I'm just saying, it's a thing. So undergirding to tie the ropes around the hull of a ship. Now, here's my question to us. How do you brace up the hull in your life? When you're going through a storm, how do you brace up your hull? There are real things happening in our lives. How are we holding it together, or are we letting him hold us together? Think about that. And I've got a little verse. It's one of my favorites, Luke 9:23, and I'm going to do it really, really quick. Deny yourself. Well, do I have it up there? Then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. To me, this is like frapping and girding up our hull. First, deny ourselves. Listen. We all have impulses in our flesh, right? We have the impulse to talk, to do, to run, and to deny ourselves means to deny the ability to be in control and allow God to be in control. Deny the way your flesh wants to handle it. So in the midst of the panic, it's where God's challenging me in my life right now, where if I hear something, or if I feel something, or if I see something, my inclination, I'm a verbal person, would be to articulate it. And I hear him all the time be like, nope, you don't need to. And it's such a good discipline for me, like, okay. Because what it means is I have to trust him with what I just saw. But it's a discipline of the tongue, right? Don't let your body dictate your choices, at least not as easily as we can let our body. I will say this, I don't know why I do this. If I drive home, and it happens every time I pull in my garage, I get out of my car, when I walk in the door, it's something in me says, feeding time. I just want to eat something. Like I walk in my house, and of course you walk in and I just want to eat. I just want to eat something. At my age, you can't just eat something when you want to eat something. So I will, and now I'm like, okay, I'm not hungry. And Paul says it in somewhere else, like, beat your body to death. Beat it in submission. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to deny myself because I'm not hungry. So whatever this, I've trained myself to do. So we all have areas like that where God will say, you deny yourself, first of all, okay? Then take up your cross. And this is how I see it. Like, sit with him. Sit in your feelings. Sit in your pain. Sit in the reality of your circumstances. Acknowledge what's real in our lives, acknowledging our circumstances and our feelings, but do it in his presence. Don't have a pity party and don't go talk to 15 people first. Get with him and just be real about what is real. feeling things, experiencing things in real time with God. God gives us permission to be authentic in those moments. He wants us to express our fear, our doubt, our insecurities. Just do it with him first. So you deny your impulse, then you take, the reality of your situation, take it up. And I wrote this down. I think this is true. God never asks us to fake our faith so others don't lose theirs. And I think sometimes in Christendom, we're like, I got to act like everything's great. Otherwise, somebody's not going to trust God. He wants us to be authentic before him. He never asks us to fake our faith so someone else won't lose it. Because that's going to mess everything up. It is being real before him. I'll be honest, take up your cross means that you can utilize things like pure desire that we have at the church and the Genesis process and healing prayer ministry and women cultivate and small groups. And there's an endless supply of areas that make it safe here to sit in your stuff. So deny your impulses, take up the reality of your life, and then follow him. Walk with him through it, but do it his way. Be obedient to him. Then we can move forward with him without being bound to the things that otherwise torment us and constantly demand our attention. There's so much stuff that's like, rah, 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 and it weighs us down. And if we can literally do that process, it will undergird our whole in our life and keep us together in the midst of storms. I'm going back on the highway now. All right, you ready? Okay, 3, be the light. When we do that, when we are the light in a situation, and we've done that thing we just talked about, that we get to bring the calm in a situation authentically, and we get to bring the peace that passes understanding. When we do that, we get to bring the fruit of the Spirit. That means real love, real joy, real patience, real peace. We get to bring those things in a situation. And honestly, it's what we need, and it's what our world needs now more than anything. Not to fake it, not to logically rationalize it, but to be so surrendered to our God that he makes us light in very dark situations. I think it was Tower Records. I couldn't remember. I just dated myself terribly. But I went into Tower Records with my mom and my sister in Annapolis years ago. And we weren't in there half a second. And I was like, it just felt funky and not safe and dark. Have you ever been in places that you're just like, ew, I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. So I told my sister, I don't want to stay in here. Let's go. Well, my mom, about a minute later, I don't know is my mom in here somewhere? Oh, she's in the middle. You moved. Do you remember this? You never remember things. Okay, so a minute or two later, if I was not so myself, it would probably be helpful. Just be helpful. I remember her coming out. She walked right past my sister and I, and she's like, I'm not going back in there. That was horrible. Now, here's my point in telling you that. If we can recognize darkness and the unsafety of it, and it wigs us out, how much more can we or the world be like, what's that? That's light. That feels good. Honestly, people come to this church family, and it's been a season of this. It's so friendly. It's so good. It feels safe. It is not us. It's his presence. God's presence is allowed to be here and invited to be here. So just be confident. Even when you can't feel that you're the light, he's still shining. You just don't get to feel it. People can tell. I can tell. You can tell the difference between light and dark. That's my encouraging words. Okay, let's continue. This is now still chapter 27. About midnight on the 14th night of the storm, we were being driven across the Sea of Adria, which is the Adrian Sea. Found that out. The sailors sensed land was near. They took soundings and found the water was only 120 feet deep. A little later, they sounded, dropped again, and found only 90 feet. At this rate, they were afraid we would soon be driven against the rocks along the shore, so they threw out 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. Then the sailors tried to abandon the ship. They lowered the lifeboat as though they were going to put out anchors from the bow. But Paul said to the commanding officer and to the soldiers, "You'll all die unless the sailors stay aboard." So the soldiers cut the ropes and let the boat fall off. As darkness gave way to the early morning light, Paul begged everyone to eat. He's really onto this eating thing. "You haven't touched food for 2 weeks," he said. "Please eat something now for your own good. For now, not a hair on your head will perish." Then he took some bread, gave thanks to God before them all, and broke off a piece and ate it. Does that sound familiar? I bet that boy's remembering what Jesus said. You remember what I've done for you. You remember that I am God. Then everyone was encouraged, and all 276 of us, Luke is writing this, and he was apparently there, began eating that, for that is the number we had on board. After eating, the crew lightened the ship further by throwing the cargo of wheat overboard. When morning dawned, they didn't recognize the coastline, but they saw a bay with a beach, so everyone escaped safely to shore. So they did get caught in the storm. They did get shipwrecked, and they spent the entire winter, 3 months, in Malta on an island, and then they ended up leaving in the spring. Here's what's crazy. Caesarea is where they started. To get from Caesarea, I'll do it your way. To get from Caesarea to Rome is normally a 5 to 10 day boat ride. It's a little over 1,400 miles. It took them over 3 months. After that, Paul spent 2 years under house arrest in Rome, but he was still preaching the truth of Jesus, and he was a light until the very end amongst a very dark world. God is light, and when he's in us, we then become light to this very dark world, and God's presence brings life, healing, and hope amidst what otherwise be hell for us and overwhelming. Paul was in it with them. He brought life, hope. Our job is the same and is our privilege as we interact with everybody around us to be that light. Listen to this verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. It says, "For God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. And he gave us this wonderful message of reconciliation. So we are Christ's ambassadors. God's making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, come back to God. For God made Christ, who never sinned, to be the offering for our sin, so we could be made right with God through Christ." We become Christ's ambassadors. We become the ones that are telling the world, this is how you reestablish a relationship with the Father. Look around. I don't know that any of us have a degree in that at all. This is what God's working with. This is plan A, and he thinks it's phenomenal. But that's us to do. And I love this in the New Testament in John chapter 17. Jesus says this as he's in the garden, and he's praying, and he knows he's getting ready to die. He's in his own storm. He says this, John 17:15, what we read this morning. "I don't ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I so have sent them into the world." Jesus knew what was going on, and God wants to use us to be light in a very dark world if we're willing to do that. Moses, Joshua, and Caleb, if you think of the Old Testament when the Israelites came out of Egypt, they would have gone in the promised land, and it would have been great. Everyone else was too scared. So those 3 men spent the next 40 years of their life being light with people that prevented them from experiencing the promised land 40 years earlier. But they were in it. The prophet Jeremiah, if we're reading that in our life group right now, Babylon is coming to take over Jerusalem. And the people were told to go with Babylon, and I'll protect you. Don't run away. Well, there was a group that were like, we're going to Egypt. Egypt's going to save us. It's interesting because Jeremiah goes with this group to Egypt and keeps proclaiming the truth of what God's telling him. He was in it with them. Paul is in prison, and he's still proclaiming truth. He's light. He was on the ship, still doing the same. He is light. And I thought it was interesting because I'm like, God, you did that too. Jesus was the light for us in our very dark world, and he came here. He's in it with us. All right, so how did Paul navigate that well, right? Because he seems to have done it really well. Listen, number 4 is listen in the light. If I could say anything, man, if we could spend time with Jesus, learn how to read our Bibles, learn how to hear him and interact with other Christians when things are going well, then by the time things hit the fan, we'd actually have a foundation to build off of, right? So it is so important that we listen in the light. Learn to listen when it's not dark. Be intentional. Be ready. God's voice, practice and train yourself to hear it. In Genesis, we only heard God's voice. Then we sinned. And then when God came into the garden, he looked at Adam and Eve and he said, "Who told you you were naked?" That was a real question, because that's another voice that was not on the planet before that they heard. Who told you to build your walls up? Who told you that you're not worthy? Who told you that you're unworthy? And who told you that there's no hope? Who told you to isolate? Who told you were ugly? Who told you that you were unseen? It's always the enemy, always. And so we get the chance to listen in the light and hear God's voice. He has to be our first source. He gives us life, and the other voice just brings death. So, how do you know which is which? I will say this: God's voice has to line up with his character and his word. Even when we talk to other people, we have great wisdom sometimes, even God-given. But if we're not seeking God first, it's not going to be as effective because it has to line up with his word. Build your trust with God in the moments where it seems you don't have to do it. Then you can cling to the thing that doesn't move when you do. I have a second story for you, and this one is a little closer to home, and I was given permission to share it. So I'm going to tell you the story of the Moes. Larissa and Jonathan Moe have 2 kids, Asher and Aaliyah. They are in the midst of a storm right now. And I'm going to read to you kind of a little bit about what they've been through, but the part is Caring Bridge. If some of you have used Caring Bridge before, where you can communicate with people who are in the hospital, I pulled a lot of Larissa's excerpts from there that I want to share with you because they're in a storm just like Paul was. So February 8th, let me show you them first. This is them. Is there a picture of Asher when he is pre all this? I think I put it in there. It'll pop up. There, that's Asher healthy and whole. So February 8th, they started to notice symptoms with Asher. February 9th, Jonathan, the dad, typed symptoms into ChatGPT and was told to take him to ER right away and do not delay. This was serious. At that, they took him to the ER. A mass was discovered around Asher's pancreas, and they instantly sent him to Hershey. Asher's 9 years old. He had developed stage 4 neuroblastoma, a rare cancer, especially for kids as old as him. In March, he started chemo in Hershey. And now I'm going to tell you some things that Larissa wrote. So March 12th, she says, "The mind of man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps," Proverbs 16:9. We can have many ideas on how life should play out. Some of us like our plans. Some of us never plan. But God is the ultimate planner. Tuesday, March 25th. "It looks like Asher's going to die," Aaliyah says, after looking at a picture from yesterday's chemo treatment. Admittedly, it was a tough day. Asher's hair is falling out at a rapid pace. They pumped him full of liquid so his body could flush the toxic chemo out faster and not destroy his kidneys and bladder. But Revelations 21:4 says this: "He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." Asher is still alive and well. All this pain and suffering is just temporary. I feel like we need to hold tight during any storm and realize that it will eventually pass. So Saturday, April 26th, the 4th round of chemo was planned. That had to be delayed because his UT counts were too low, so May 1st, he had his 4th round of chemo. This is what she wrote. "The odds are stacked against him because his age and the staging of this disease. I don't say that to be hopeless with my wording, but to share information about his condition. I feel ill-equipped to fight this battle in any way but on my knees. I trust God to equip me for the time and situation in which he has placed us. I cannot be discouraged because thankfully I do not hold to the delicate balance of life in my human hands. I recognize the miracle of each breath and a moment I have. I can be strong and courageous and know that he is with us wherever we go." And then she starts preaching. If you feel like the burden of the world is on your shoulders today or any day, please remove it. It was never yours to carry. You're a miracle, and God has carried you every step of the way. Trust and let go. He knows the plans he has for us, and in the end, the victory's his. Okay, then he had rounds 3 and 4 of chemo, and the tumor shrunk 40%. He was taken to Sloan Kettering in New York to have very complicated surgery of taking that tumor off. July 23rd, successful surgery. July 26th, she wrote this: "Maybe you're at a low point today. I would encourage you to look up and focus on the light. Focus on the good, not the bad. The storms come and go, but God is forever. Let yourself laugh. Rejoice for the many good things going on. I think it helps you forget the storm around you as time moves on. You're shaped by your storm, but you don't have to be consumed by it if you keep your eyes above the waves. A couple days later, July 29th. It's a hard thing when your child asks if they're going to make it. It's tough when they wonder each night when they go to sleep if they're going to die. Sometimes in moments like this, we're reminded how fragile we really are. God knit me together in my mother's womb, so I have to trust He'll put the pieces back together when we fall apart. There is no better physician than the one who made us. May God help us rest in His hands. August 21st, Asher's declared cancer-free. Then he has a stem cell transplant scheduled for August 26th. The transplant's delayed, and he has to instead go through a 7th round of chemo, bridging chemo starting September 1. September 2nd, the chemo's delayed because now Asher's dealing with pancreatitis. Finally, October 9th, Asher has a stem cell transplant. This is October 18th, a couple days later. The storm is raging in his body, and this is the worst condition I've ever seen Asher in. We'll sink if we don't focus on the true physician holding it all together. I've had many members of staff here asking if I'm okay and how I'm doing. I feel like I guess this would be a time one is supposed to fall apart. If there was ever a time to lose it, I suppose it would be now. But I'm at peace. I could put my faith in the medical advancements, but that never stands the test of time. Honestly, the more you know about science of the body, the more you realize that we aren't just balls of random chaos. Not that I ever thought that we were purposeless balls of cells, but I know some people will use modern day science as a comfort. We were designed with purpose and are sustained by His design. I have faith that God sees more than I do and that He'll see us through. I'm grateful for modern day medicine, and I see the value of it. I appreciate that we've come as far as we have in treating cancer and other illnesses. God gives us the knowledge to advance medicine, yet the entanglement of His design with our bodies is far beyond understanding. Every cell and system reveals His wisdom and shows the depth of His design. So instead of falling apart, I'll just fall into the arms of the one who knows us best, the one who cares for us and will quiet the storm when He says, "Peace, be still." Asher then had full-blown effects from the stem cell transplant and another storm. And on Monday, October 27, a lot of people from church were really praying for him because he could have died. His stomach was distended 4 times larger. He had to be on oxygen. He was throwing up, and it was not good. He got VOD, which created a lot of those symptoms. But on Wednesday, November 5th, after that, Asher's numbers, this is what she writes, Asher's numbers continue to improve each day. We might be held captive here in the hospital, but we are not destroyed. Asher's being renewed day by day, and I am so grateful. The Lord has indeed done great things in us in the past, during this day, and He'll continue to take care of His people moving forward. We dream of being home again soon with our family together as a whole unit. We look forward to the laughter and time spent together. But until we can come home again, we'll shout for joy for all the great things being done at this time. Psalm 126 says, when the Lord brought back the captives of Zion, we were like those in a dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with joyful shouting. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them, and the Lord has done great things for us, and we're really joyful. That is how you navigate a storm. Just for an update, Asher's numbers are continuing to go up and up the way they need to be, and he is almost where he needs to be able to be sent home. There are prayers for Thanksgiving. But that's how we do things. We have to rely on the Lord. We've got to press into Him. And I think I need to tell Larissa, she needs to publish this stuff. It's so good, and it's so real. It's so real. So I'm going to pray in just a bit here, and I want to give you guys the opportunity. Does anyone remember the 4 things? Anyone? Yeah. Get in the light as soon as possible when you're starting to freak out or be overwhelmed or you're just done. When you're in that storm, listen in the dark. He has things to say. Number 3, God will use us to be light in the darkness. And the best time to hear God's voice is when we can learn to listen in the light. We can learn what His voice sounds like without all the pressure and anxiety.
I'm so glad you decided to join us for our service today. I really hope that you heard from the Lord, you were encouraged by him, you were just touched in some way knowing that God loves you and cares about you. Hey, if you would like more information about our church or just would like us to be able to connect with you, to pray with you, you can go to our online connect card at both our website or on our app, either way, and just fill that out and we'd love to connect with you. All right, God bless you.